Without raising your hand, how many of you are looking at a less than full calendar? Maybe for the next few months, maybe you book out further than that and you're just not really pleased with where your bookings are right now. And maybe even some of you are wondering if it's worth it. Or you've got a doula that's in that position. Even as leaders, most of us will be lying if we said that there hasn't been some point in time in our business where we've thought that. Some of you may be brand new, I know some of you are new in this room, and maybe you haven't had those valleys in your business, or maybe you have just grown big. You've been in for 4 years, and all 4 years have just been awesome. Okay? Keep going with the momentum, because you need momentum. Okay? And keep rolling with that. But I want to tell you, at some point in time, you got to expect that it's going to come. Okay? Because God grows us during those times. But it will hit you. And it's what you do during those difficult times that determines your success. You've got to pick yourself back up and let God grow your character, and you'll come out stronger on the other side. So God has taught me a lot in recent months that has grown me as a leader and a businesswoman. But a couple years ago, I was at that point of giving it all up. After 4 years in Premier, I was contemplating my renewal because things in my personal life were weighing me down. And many of you know that we struggled to get pregnant. But few of you know the toll that it really took on me emotionally and spiritually. It took us 4 years, a tubal pregnancy, and very few answers before we finally got pregnant with this sweet boy. This is Kohler. And obviously my family is growing. God is blessing us with another sweet boy in March. And we're so excited about that. But I'm so blessed to have Premier because it allows me to stay home with him and with future baby Brant. But a couple of months before Kohler was born, I completely let my business go. In November of 2010, I was 7 months pregnant. I had 9 shows on my calendar. But I had really very little to follow that. I was counting on those shows to book my spring after Kohler was born, instead of getting on the phone and making calls to get more hostesses at that point. And mid-November, I found myself on bed rest. I had 2 shows that week, and I told my husband, you have to go do them, because we need the money. You don't have a choice. And he did. Let me move this down real quick. And he did. He went and did them. And to top it off, he had an $800 show and a $1,000 show. I'm not sure why I don't have him do all my shows. But the funny thing is that came out of that is that he now has an annual show every November for one of those hostesses because she wants him back. And I'm good with that. But thankfully, y'all, that was the only week in November that I was completely bedridden. But as it turned out, all of the other shows that I had booked for November canceled. All of them. They all had legitimate reasons. But instead of letting God grow my character during that valley and picking myself back up and doing what I knew I needed to be doing, I grew bitter. And I really started to believe that Premier wasn't for me. I never tried getting bookings, and I became very complacent with the little business that I did have. And I actually, after Kohler was born, the negativity that was fostering inside of me prior to that got worse. And you know that negativity breeds negativity. And I actually started to use Kohler, the reason that I was doing this full time, to not work my business. We need Premier more now than ever, and because personal training, which was my main stream of income prior to having Kohler, my own personal training business tanked during my maternity leave. And I was either going to need to pick up the slack with Premier, or I was going to have to go back to a full-time position. And my son was going to have to go to daycare, and that's just not what we wanted. But instead of getting on the phone and jump-starting my business and all those things, I became very selfish. I had a horrible attitude. And about the whole situation, it would lead to many arguments with my husband. But I felt like I had earned the right to stay home and not have to work at all. Because after all, I had waited 4 years for a baby. And now that I had him, I was staying home, and I didn't care what it took. Even if that meant Michael was going to have to spend more time away from us. How selfish of me. But over the next few months, it became very apparent we had to do something to make ends meet. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and I became desperate. But desperation is actually a very good place for you to be in your business. Because it can bring you to your knees to seek God's guidance, which is exactly where we need to be. But I'm sort of stubborn and prideful, and I didn't want to admit that this was my fault. I did eventually come to my knees, but I took the long way around it. Maybe, I'm going to share with you here in just a few minutes some tips on what I did to jumpstart my business. And I just take these things and apply them to your business. Or to jewelers maybe that you're trying to help. But maybe you don't know someone that's necessarily at that point of desperation, or you're not quite to that point. But that doesn't mean that these aren't things that you can't use or give to people that can use them. And maybe you're just complacent in your business. Complacency is a really bad place for us to be. Because if we're not moving forward, we're moving backward, right? So before I share those tips with you though, I do want you to know the game changer. And you've probably heard Melissa Terrell say this time and time again. If you've been in this business for a while, but you have to decide to work your business. Because all of these things that I'm going to tell you mean nothing if you don't decide that it's worth it. You got to make it a priority on your schedule. Whether you're doing this full-time or you're doing this part-time, you've got to make it a priority. No one ever said it's easy, but it is worth it, right? So, how do you get back on track? First, number one, get on the phone. You knew it was coming, right? When you're trying to get bookings, and this has been said more than once tonight, when you're trying to get bookings, you have to pick up the phone. Texting, emailing, those are things that there's a place for them, but you've got to use the phone and talk to people. I started with past hostesses because I had them. But some of you are brand new, or you've got brand new jewelers that you're trying to help, and they don't have those past hostesses. But use their contact list and their phone. I do a booking boot camp with all of my new jewelers, and they get tons of shows just from the contact list on their phone. So don't be afraid to use that. Don't be afraid to ask people for help. People want to help you. Women thrive on helping others. But remember that you have to be confident in what you're saying whenever you talk to these ladies. You don't want to sound desperate when you call. Okay? You may be there. You don't want to sound that way. And if you're not confident, fake it till you make it. And the way that you do that is you take someone else's verbiage and you practice it over and over again until you're comfortable with it and you're confident in what you're saying. So here's some verbiage that I actually use when I'm making a phone call. Hi Dianna, this is Dianna with Premier Jewelry. It's been a bit, because I'm calling past hostess, do you have a sec? I took some time off of my jewelry business when my son was born, and I really loved every minute that I had with him, but I'm excited to jumpstart my business. Maybe, it's not a baby, obviously, but some whatever event you took time off from, you can put that in there, if that's the case for you. And I'm looking for just a few of my favorite past hostesses. Favorite's really important, because they need to know that they count, and that they matter to your business. And to let me come to their house, show my jewelry, just to get my name out there again, if that's something you might be able to help with, okay? And then just see what they have to say. Or maybe you haven't had a major life event happen